Joining us now to try to sort out just a few of the incredibly complex issues that are facing those that are coming to the United States is Seattle immigration attorney Carol Brown. Carol, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Explain to us just the incredibly complex process and just why so many people find it more attractive to come to the U.S. illegally than legally.
Well, right now we have very few means for people to come into the United States and get legal status in the U.S. There are family relationships, and those have to be very close family relationships, and they can petition for their family members to come to the U.S. as permanent residents, or there are employment-based visas. And those also, there's long backlogs. There are many, many years that people have to go through a process in order to come here legally.
And of course, people are coming for different reasons, but let's take a look at what some of those wait times are for visas. Now, here's one example. You're a U.S. citizen. You want to get your adult children over here from India. It's going to take you more than 5 years. From Mexico, it's more than 17 years. And from the Philippines, it would take you about 15 years for a U.S. citizen to get their kids over here. And similarly, let's look at U.S. citizens who want to bring their brothers and sisters over here from India. They're waiting 10 years for visas, more than 14 years from Mexico, and wow, 22 years to bring your brother or sister over here from the Philippines. So families are divided for decades.
And often
because I think people are having trouble understanding why welcoming in more immigrants during a recession would actually help the economy. So let's take the case of, I don't know, Jose. He's decided he no longer likes living in his native country, so he comes across the border into America. Tell me how he helps the economy.
Well, before Jose, let's talk about Josefina, who's already here, because, I mean, you really have to look at this.
Is that an actual Hispanic name, Josefina?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, you said Jose, so I wanted to,
Gotcha.
give you the woman on the other side. So, because over half of undocumented immigrants who are here, and actually over half of immigrants are women, but it's always Jose that comes up.
Sorry.
So, I'm just saying.
Sorry.
It is a women's issue too.
Okay.
So Josefina, who's already here, right? She has maybe even been here for 10 years, but she hasn't been able to get a job that utilizes her full skills because she's undocumented, so she's got to take whatever she can. As a result, she's only earning a certain amount, which means she's only paying a certain amount of taxes based on that income. If her income goes up, she's going to pay more taxes. If she has more money, she's going to spend more money. If she knows she's going to be here and the ICE isn't going to come and knock on her door, she's going to buy a house, she's going to buy a car, and all of those dollars are going to go into our local economy and our national economy to help build a stronger economy.
Buying the house and the car part is fine, but getting the job that suits your skills isn't that going to take a job away from an American who's already here?
No, I mean, the reality is there's tons of, for example, when people say to me, well, we've got high unemployment rates and there are all these Americans losing jobs, I think the reality is the jobs that immigrants are doing, unfortunately, the jobs that immigrants are doing are on the lower end of the scale. And so you don't see Wall Street workers who have been laid off in New York running to pick cherries in Washington State.
Because they're no good at it.
Yeah, I mean, people say unskilled, professions, and I mean, I've watched them pick, and it's tough. I mean, it's actually a skill to pick good apples and good cherries well and quickly.
Plus, they'd set a credit cherry. They're not supposed to be here. Take the hint. Go back home, get in line, do it the right way.
Well, and we've talked about this before. First of all, it would be ridiculous to try and deport everybody, and everybody knows it would cost more than...
I'm not saying deport them, I'm saying voluntarily.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really happen.
No?
So, it's financially ridiculous, but it's also absurd because these are folks who have been here for over 10 years in many cases, and if they went home, nothing would work in this country. And I'm telling you, that's the case.
But then we'd beg for them to come back.
Yes, we would.
Even conservatives would beg for them to come back.
Yes, we would. But
the issue for the majority of Americans, this is Democrats and Republicans, because both party leaderships have failed the country fairly badly on this. But for most Americans, it's the illegal aspect of it, not immigrants. Because every American is aware that we're a nation of immigrants, but we're a nation like you and like my mom of legal immigrants.
Well, I think that actually most Americans, in all of the polls that have been done, including, all the way through the present time, I can send you the numbers, but 60 to 67% of people on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, good Americans who are out there, believe that we should fix the immigration system, Congress should fix the immigration system, and that it should include legalization and a pathway to citizenship, because they understand that all of these jobs that are being done by people who are working, you know, in a system that creates two wage tiers, right? I mean, it's not good for anybody to have this huge class of workers who are earning something different than the folks who are here with documents.
Well, it is.
Part of this, Pramila, is people worried about cultural change, right? It isn't strictly about people coming here and taking other people's jobs. It's about some Americans who are worried that entire neighborhoods don't speak English anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So I think numbers do make a difference to some people, don't they?
I think that you're right, that there's a lot of fear around the cultural piece. But the reality is there's always been fear around the cultural piece in this country. We've never had a group of immigrants, including going back to the Irish, who people weren't afraid of in terms of changing the culture. The better we integrate immigrants in, the less that fear is going to be there. And so having people be a part of a legal framework where they do learn English, where they do get acculturated and into the community, which history shows happens in the first generation it happens. And so I really don't think that...
Yeah, I'll grant you that all... It's creating jobs. We need jobs to be created now, but that seems counterintuitive, that having people come in from another country at a time when the real unemployment rate is something like 17%, that would seem to make unemployment worse, not better.
Well, I've always said that the thing that we should always be arguing about is not whose jobs these are, but how we create better jobs and more jobs. And so if you look at better jobs get created when you have a workforce that is protected by a series of rights, a series of wage protections, a series of employment protections, worker protections, and more jobs gets created when we look at all the different ways in which the job market is driven by, say, small business entrepreneurship, which immigrants, you know, in the early part of the 20th century, immigrants came in, created jobs. It's still the case that you can see that 9 out of 10 immigrant businesses create significant numbers of jobs, and interestingly, because immigrants get hired in at lower levels than native-born workers, even if they have the same skills, native-born workers will end up getting pushed up the wage spectrum and the responsibility spectrum because there is an immigrant that's been hired under them. So there's lots of ways in which I believe immigrants are stimulating the economy on the jobs front.